Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy here on the SmartMoneyCulture.tv. We've got a lot that has gone on this weekend, some pretty scary stuff too. So when you are looking at some of the things that are affecting the country right now, the biggest thing right now is Hurricane Helene, downgraded to a tropical storm, but still very, very deadly. If you're not aware of what's happening on the East Coast right now, we're going to talk about that. It is devastating. And we're going to go through some other issues here. But the topic of the day we're going to focus on is the need for CPAs, the need for tax preparers, accountants, people in the tax industry that are willing to deal with numbers and help people out. So again, it's going to become more important as things get more complicated and a lot of the laws change. So making sure you're up to date on the laws is going to be very helpful. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. So just shared our first article here. Hurricane Helene downgraded to a tropical storm, still very, very devastating. Worst storm in decades as far as the amount of rainfall and devastation that it's caused. So again, we have flooding, road closures, power outages, and hard-hit areas. Trump is expected to visit Georgia City, and Biden and Harris have canceled their campaigns and are planning and making plans to visit the hard-hit areas as well. So just some of the details, there's been over 90 deaths, but there are over 1,000 people missing right now. So that death toll could rise substantially. Western North Carolina has been hit particularly hard. Entire communities under several feet of water. There's plenty of videos showing water, neck high, almost up to the top of doorways for homes and stuff. Landed Thursday night as a Category 4 hurricane. Most of the storm has dissipated. The rainfall, though, is still falling in the Appalachians, West Virginia, Virginia, and they're concerned about that. But we have power out to more than 2 million people, and drinking water is not available. So here's a part, Trump is suspected to visit Valdosta, Georgia today, and then Harris has canceled her campaign events and returned to Washington, and should be visiting shortly. So we have new updates as we go. 2 deputies killed in raging floodwaters. Again, it continues to push in the mid-Atlantic states. I'm going to just kind of hit the highlights, but there's so much here just to give you an idea of this, and they're just adding more and more information as this goes. 4 to 5 months worth of rain fell in 3 days in parts of the Carolinas. North Carolina being hit very hard. And this is, ongoing news. I believe this is NBC News. But again, you pretty much go to any news source and they will have ongoing updates. This is the worst event in our office's history from South Carolina. The damage is, you can just see some of these videos. I'm just going to.
This morning, the devastating effects of Hurricane Helene reaching far and wide as residents come face to face with destruction and a tragic reality.
I don't know if we can rebuild or be able to come back from this.
After the storm swept into the southeast last week, floodwaters downing bridges and submerging entire towns like Chimney Rock, North Carolina, now destroyed. And as cleanup begins, large swaths of communities like here in Asheville, North Carolina, still underwater. From above the city, heartbreaking views. Some areas still unreachable by water slow to recede.
I've never seen anything like this. I mean, there were buildings fully submerged.
My mother lives in a nursing home. We tried to get there today, and you just can't.
Some people kayaking to safety. We were there when water rescues got underway. And the storm also devastating Florida's Gulf Coast. The dangerous surge flooding home and city streets. Helene's 100-plus-mile-an-hour winds ripping out floors as locals begin the long road to rebuilding.
We're going to get started. We're not going to wait a month or two.
Throughout the South and beyond, cars that survived the storm
Lines moving very slow.
at a standstill, waiting for hours to fill up at the pump. While in North Carolina, many roads are impassable, making rescues even more difficult, and meaning the true scope of the damage and loss is still unknown.
What Mother Nature can do and the damage is just, it's incredible.
Guys, the images here are truly harrowing. Now, some messaging from the White House. President Biden is set to visit Helene-impacted areas as long as it doesn't interfere with search and rescue operations, which we know are still ongoing. One bright spot, silver lining, if you will, in all of this is we've seen so many people in this community resilient, banding together to help one another share resources in this crisis that is slow to improve. Savannah and Hoda.
All right, George, thank you very much.
Yeah, so some of the governors in the area looking at this are comparing this to a war zone. You have entire cars buried just in the sand in Florida. So it goes on and on. If you have any way to help out, there are organizations that are already mobilizing. There's plenty of communities that don't have water because their water systems were contaminated due to the storm. And plenty of that are still without power. I mean, it's going to be a massive, massive cleanup here. But there are plenty of organizations that do participate, that do ship all kinds of goods and foodstuffs to devastated areas. So there are plenty of ways to help out. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which can be controversial, but at the same time, is actually really good about getting a lot of hands and shipping supplies across the globe to where disasters strike. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of support through Catholic charities. If you want to go to any interfaith organization, I'm sure they can direct you, Red Cross, to organizations where you can go in and actually help with your hands or see what's actually needed and help support the recovery efforts there on the East Coast. So prayers going to the people in those devastated areas, and we should be mindful of them. So next article, this is a huge issue. This might actually hurt the recovery in throughout the southeast. Right now, in a week's time, if we don't have, and this came out yesterday, well, actually this Tuesday. So if we don't get some kind of agreement, we're about to have a port strike on the entire East Coast and Gulf states. So the entire eastern portion of the country is going to have a strike starting Tuesday if we don't have this off. And this is supposed to start midnight on Monday. So not being able to get goods and materials to repair all the damage, it's going to make it so much harder to come back from the Hurricane Helene and all the damage that was caused. It's expected to cost the economy as much as $5 billion a day. And this is the ILA, the International Longshoremen's Association, which does all the unloading of cargo and manages all that. They represent 45,000 port workers. And there's an impasse over pay and automation. So they're demanding much higher pay. Now, I'm not an expert on this. I do know port workers do make good money. But it's hard work. It's absolutely hard and dangerous work. So again, this could be the first coastwide strike since 1977. So 50 years ago? Well, actually 47 years ago was the last time we had a strike like this. Right now, no negotiations are taking place and none are planned before tonight when the strike is supposed to start. So fortunately, expect a strike. It's they said it won't impact military cargo shipments or cruise ship traffic. So if you have a cruise, go ahead and go on the cruise. Just it's going to be much harder to afford things when they come back. Most businesses that can have been, like Costco, Walmart, have been doing what they can to anticipate this, to stock up before the strike. But that requires warehousing, that requires a lot more costs to stock goods for a huge strike like this, and there's no telling how long it will take. It's the smaller stores, the mom and pops that just, they don't have the finances to go out and pay extra money for shipping and for storage to stock up in anticipation of a strike. So if you're on the East Coast, I would get your essentials. I would, and even on the West Coast, a lot of things are going to be shipped from the West Coast to the East, but again, that's going to be a lot more expensive and difficult. So this is going to cause a lot of problems. So again, it could cost billions of dollars. The timing with the election, it couldn't be worse. But here's Harold Daggett, and I'm sure this is taken out of context, but he says these people today don't know what a strike is. And we probably don't, since we haven't had serious strikes. And he said in a recent video post, I'll cripple you, I will cripple you. Talking to not the American public, but the businesses that actually do the shipping and bring all the shipping in, Maersk and APM Terminals, two of the bigger ones. And so he's starting to shut down 36 ports, pretty much the entire East Coast through Texas. So stock up now. Well, if you can, but it's going to be very crazy what's going to happen, and so the next few weeks could be very interesting. This is actually a piece of good news, believe it or not. Michigan nuclear power plant is the first to restart in U.S. history. Why is it good news? A lot of people are against nuclear power at all odds, but they're going in, they're upgrading the equipment. Nuclear power overall is one of the safest power sources of power out there, and it's cheap, it's plentiful, and just people really freak out about the idea of nuclear power. But this is happening in Michigan, and they're actually talking about restarting 3 Mile Island in California to come back online in 2028. Why? With EVs and increased manufacturing, it is expected that the costs are going to be higher than ever. So again, this is I think it's good news that we're taking it seriously, that we need to improve things, and they're actually coming out with innovative ways to expand nuclear power cheaply and affordably, which I think is great for consumers, great for the economy. We're heading out of the break, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. And we're going to jump to the next article here. So these are going to be a series of articles that all have kind of a similar theme here, and I try to do that as we go through this. Brazil's Supreme Court, again, hitting X with more fines and going after X and Starlink. So again, treating those as one company, even though they're two. Ongoing feud here with Elon Musk. But again, this really highlights issues of free speech and government censorship. So again, this is, and again, there have been plenty of right-wing governments that have dictatorships, etc., that have censored speech. And so this is not just a problem on the left, but lately it has mainly been a problem on the left. So again, which is really ironic and sad, because the left historically has been one of the strongest defenders of free speech. Now throughout Europe and Australia, the free world, we see leftist governments going after free speech time and time again. So not only that have they smacked him with another multi-dollar fine, they have an asset freeze on them. And so, again, the big concern here is the ADF, Alliance for Defending Freedom International, ADF, calls their approach one of the most oppressive cultures of censorship in the Western Hemisphere, which could spread across the West. So heavy-handed government censors, similar to communist or fascist states, which, again, this is should be concerning. Now, X, they have been forced to censor speech in other countries. This is, I think, one of the most egregious examples here. But apparently they are taking steps to meet the court's requirements, including blocking the counts in question and naming a Brazil-based representative that they can represent them in Brazil. So let's see what goes on here. Again, this is, if it goes away quietly in the night or it just continues to stand one way or another, it's unfortunately being copied elsewhere. And again, we have plenty of issues here in our country, here in the United States, of censorship. This is an interesting little case, a primer on the Eric Adams case, the mayor of New York City. Again, very influential position, and again, very prominent position here. So, and this is an opinion piece by Paul Morrow. It says, what's behind the indictment of New York City's Mayor Eric Adams? Is it the Biden administration going after him for speaking out on immigration, how much it's costing New York? Or is this diligent anti-corruption enforcement? His opinion, it's both, which is probably true. Again, would the Biden DOJ be going after him if he hadn't spoken up and become a vocal, big voice, calling out the costs of ongoing wide open border enforcement, zero border enforcement? Who knows? But together with several other city mayors, Adams took a trip in November 2023 to D.C. in an attempt to pressure the Biden administration for financial assistance regarding housing migrants, because it really, across the United States, it is costing these governments, and again, across pretty much across the entire country, millions and millions of dollars to house migrants, put them somewhere. I mean, Chicago built a tent city in the wintertime for them just to give them something. And it's just, Chicago's winters are brutal. And it was right after that the feds hit the door of Adams' 25-year-old campaign finance director, Brianna Suggs. So while he was on this trip is when the investigation started. Coincidence? Doubtful. But is there truth to it? So, again, doesn't mean Teen Adams is squeaky clean here, but this is the problem, and this is when we have political retaliation. Stalin famously said, "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime." Basically, nobody is perfect, and we will find something and go after them. They might force Adams to resign, which is probably the goal here. But is he guilty? That's the real question. And the question is, really, we don't know. So it goes through the standards. The main point here is, while it doesn't look good, and he did get plenty of benefits from the Turkish government, is there a solid quid pro quo? Now, the Supreme Court recently made it harder to prove up a quid pro quo, probably due to the indictment of Trump when he was president, on close to nothing. I mean, it's just, for the Ukraine thing. So, again, we have politics affecting other cases going back, and Adams is not playing nice either. He locked his phone in a way that made it very, very difficult to do the for the DOJ to get into his phone. And so it talks about that. So he's hiding stuff. And so is there some truth to it? Who knows? Will the DOJ go after that as long as they're able to? Most likely. And so that will be very interesting to see what happens there. Is Eric Adams being targeted unfairly? Open question. I don't know. But again, when people speak out against the government and the government goes after them, even fellow Democrats, that's scary. That's not a free and open society. So this next article, again, we've talked about already how $42 billion as part of the Inflation Reduction Act was allocated. And this is the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed solely with Democrat support. Not a single Republican voted for it. And it got over Kamala Harris was the deciding vote here. Again, there's money thrown every such way, which is one of the huge reasons we've had the inflation that we've had. A lot of this money still hasn't been spent yet. So 3 years later, and not a single person has benefited from this $42 billion. How is it being spent? What's going on with it? They are focusing first on getting a bureaucracy, plans together, just like Obamacare when they did this. Every single state had to come up with their own plan, their own idea. Very expensive, added a lot of layers of bureaucracy to it. And that's what's keeping them. So in Michigan in particular, they got an allocation of $1.5 billion. Still hasn't connected a single person to the internet. And so they explained how bureaucratic procedures continue to prevent officials in Michigan from moving forward. It was promised to connect over 200,000 Michiganders. So far, it's been zero. 3 years into it. So there's other problems. If you want more details on it, here's a link. They break it down by state. You'll report from Citizens Against Government Waste. And the takeaway here, I would say, is that the government is not good or efficient at doing most things. There's some things they do well, but most things, no, they don't. I mean, it's just you get too many bureaucracy, too many politicians with their fingers in the pie, and it just messes things up. And billions upon billions, if not trillions of dollars have been wasted. So again, another example, SpaceX rescue mission. We had the two astronauts from the Boeing Starliner. I feel sorry for them. I actually do. They've been stranded there since June. So their rescue mission from SpaceX was launched over the weekend and actually left Florida at 1:17 p.m. yesterday. And it's got a 5-month mission there. So these are the astronauts going up. These are the astronauts that will be rescued or brought back. They were supposed to only be there a week, but because this is a 5-month mission, the SpaceX is not coming back until February. So these guys still have a long time to sit around and wait. I'm sure they're going to find other things to do, but it's supposed to be an 8-day mission, and they'll be hitching a ride back in February of next year. So moving forward, this is a political article. This is kind of getting into some more of this. France's new liberal government, far left government, more liberal than Macron's government. Now Macron and the far left, they worked together, colluded, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that the far right did not have a chance to take over. And as a result, we have Michel Barnier, who is the prime minister, and they are working on an exceptional temporary tax on the profits of big corporations. They want to make sure they're paying their fair share. Sound familiar? So they're trying to get their public finances back on track because guess what? They're overspending, and they're about to get hit with a massive fine by the EU. So they're raising the corporate tax or tax on corporate profits from 25% to 33.5% on companies making over a billion with turnover of over a billion. And again, this will affect about 300 companies and raise 8 billion pounds a year, or euros a year, which I think it's, if I remember correctly, the exchange rate is about 2 to 1. So about 16 billion. Macron had lowered the rate when he came to power in 2017, and now it's going back the other way. So Macron's not happy about it, but he's not in power anymore because he cut a deal. And so the biggest problem, overspending. So they face a excessive deficit procedure in Brussels, and this is because the EU doesn't have direct control over all the different countries. They are trying to make sure that certain countries don't go nuts and affect the euro in very negative ways by overspending, deficit spending, etc. France has been doing that, and so because of that, they need to raise taxes and cut spending. So again, we're seeing the exact same things happen here in the United States. And so this is higher taxes and lower interest rates are ahead. What advisors say to do. And this is I thought this was a very good article from USA Today. Why does it say higher taxes are ahead? Well, especially if Kamala Harris gets elected, she's promised to raise taxes. And again, taxes targeting the rich will affect everybody. Will affect investment, jobs, job creation, etc. And so one of the big concerns here is just because the Fed cut rates, people will probably get fewer returns on their cash. So savings, the incentive to save will go down. We actually want the opposite. We want people to save more. We want people to invest more in the economy. And so, again, the Trump tax cuts are scheduled to expire at the end of 2025. But the biggest problem here is it doesn't matter who gets elected if we don't do something about our spending. So, again, one of the things looking for I think the details are later on. Even with the higher tax rates, it says that with Harris trying to raise the tax rates, we're going to get $400 billion estimated over 10 years. Oh, no, I think it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what we're spending. And so saving rates are falling with the Fed cutting rates because as interest rates go down and inflation is still high, real inflation is still high, it just destroys the purposes for savings if you can't get a return on your money. So not only is the government planning on taking more money, but again, you're losing money from cash. So Americans trying to do the right thing fiscally are getting hammered two different ways. So how can you counter higher taxes? Take out more money now. So you should consider taking advantage of the current income tax rates before they potentially rise in 26 by accelerating income in 24 and 25. Take out more money now when it's being taxed at a later rate or at a lower rate. Roth conversions are a great way to help with that. And then making sure you have wise investments. And I'm not going to say do this or this is where they get a little bit into the weeds. But talk with a financial planner or advisor. If you haven't reviewed your financial strategy, you absolutely should with a lot of the changes happening in the market. And again, with the recent rate cuts. Again, it's not encouraging savings. I think it's hurting people overall. And again, we have a lot of perverse incentives in our economy right now, and so it's really kind of frustrating to see that. So jumping to one of the last ones, this kind of really dovetails into our topic of the day: what not to do here. This is and I like to share these just kind of people can see. Okay, people do get convicted. People do get hauled off to prison. When is this happening? So this is a software engineer. He's a manager, and he's making more. He's making about 1.2 million, and over 3 years he claimed 1.1 million in medical expenses. So, he claimed he had an appendectomy. I don't even know what that is, but that's okay. He was found guilty on 3 counts of tax evasion for 3 different years, 17, 18, and 19, by claiming to owe only $28,500. He got $165,000 in refunds over those 3 years, and overstated his medical expenses by $945,000. So it's just wowzers. He just thought it would be a good idea. I really hope he wasn't using a CPA or tax preparer, because that person should. There's no reason they should be signing off on something like this. It's kind of fraud. So not only did that, he didn't fess up to it when, say, look, I made a mistake here. Let me pay it. He lied to an IRS agent in 2 audit interviews. Yeah, that's going to get you in hot water. Saying that the 1.1 million in medical bills were related to the appendectomy, but he could only provide proof for a few $100s for treatment related to that operation. And that took place all the way back in 2010. So nowhere close to when he wrote it off. It's kind of funny, kind of sad. Richardson told a representative in the tax audit he did this because he had not been caught the first time he did it. So, yes, eventually he fessed up, but only after lying directly to the IRS. And again, his sentencing is for January 14th, 2025. There's no statute of limitations on fraud. So if you are actively defrauding the U.S. government, and that's not, I didn't file my taxes, it's I lied on my tax returns, I hid assets, and then went and lied about it. This is doing everything wrong, faces a penalty of 5 years. So we're out of time. We'll continue this right after the break. Welcome back, everybody. And I have one last article that really just dives into a big issue today and for our topic of the day. And I thought it was a really good article from Forbes. It came out on Saturday. And tax breaks. Artificial intelligence is changing the game. So even though, and this is one of the big problems I have with the IRS saying, look, use our free software. We're going to make it available to you. How do you think they're powering it? With IA or AI. So nobody's looking at these returns. It's all being done by computers. Nobody's verifying that you're doing this right. If you have a simple W-2 article or W-2 income, go ahead, use it all day long. I have adult children now, and they're filing their own tax returns, and I've told them, just go use the free online form. I mean, it's just, if you have a simple W-2, nothing's going on. But as you get older, you start getting dependents. If you purchase a home, hopefully, if you start investing, this is what people should be doing as they get older and start putting money away. This is when you absolutely should be talking to CPAs or a tax preparer, someone that's established. So again, we're going to be talking about the article, but at the same time, this really does hit home. And again, we don't do this. This is not me. I'm a tax attorney. I deal in negotiations. I'm more of a big picture. How do we solve these nasty issues with the IRS? I don't prepare taxes. That's just not my forte. My sister actually went to school for accountancy, and she hated her degree. She did for 4 years and hated it, and now she doesn't do much with it. Me, I went and got a history degree and loved it. Now, there's not a whole lot you can do with a history degree, so I had to go to law school, which is what I ended up going. So they looked at artificial intelligence on the return and how does that affect going and asking more complicated questions. So they went to two of the leading tax preparation companies' chatbots, and they provided inaccurate or irrelevant responses up to 50% of the time when asked 16 complex tax questions. So, taxpayer advocate with the IRS has also warned taxpayers should not solely rely on AI-generated tax advice. Now, a lot of firms out there are using AI. They're using it to be more efficient. They're using it to be able to handle more tax returns and help more people out. However, they're doing that with oversight, with review. There's some accountability there. And that's one of my biggest problems. If you use the IRS system and they mess up your return and you get a free return from them, who are you going to complain to? The IRS will not care, and they will have zero accountability for messing up your return or not giving you good advice, etc. They already have zero accountability. If you call the IRS and they give you bad advice and you follow it and it really hurts you, you can't, it's not legal advice. You can't rely on what they tell you at all. And a lot of people get very frustrated. They call the IRS, they give them bad advice, they rely on it. Doesn't matter. The IRS has zero accountability. So, one of the big concerns here and problems is the pool of available CPAs has been shrinking. We have boomers and Gen Xers retiring, and some of it's just health, and Gen Zers just aren't excited about accounting. It's not their cup of tea, I guess. So, and this is a generational thing, it is a problem. But if you know someone that's looking, you don't have to be a math whiz. You just have to be detail oriented. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to where it was someone that just started doing their boss's bookkeeping. And when they're doing their boss's bookkeeping, they started, they learned, and they became the office manager. Then they frequently go into bookkeeping for themselves, and then might eventually end up being as a CPA or a tax preparer. If you're interested at all, there are many, many great careers. You will have great job security, and you make decent money once you get good at it. You make pretty good money. There's plenty of people that start at H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt. They start out there, get some experience, and then continue to improve their education and move on to an actual CPA firm. So again, we need plenty of good CPAs. The problem is the CPAs we have are overwhelmed. I do have CPAs that are excellent, that are expanding, that are adding more staff. And again, most CPA firms can't find good staff out there. And I've tried to encourage people to join different firms and get that education. Many will train. They will train you if you're willing to go and actually take it seriously. So they are investing in technology to help with this. Part of the issue here is there's always more and more layers of bureaucracy. One of the biggest ones is the Corporate Transparency Act. Sorry, didn't mean to click on it. Just meant to highlight it, which is due by this year. You have to file and report. Anybody that owns a business has to report that. It's a new thing from the Biden administration, and it's just adding another layer of bureaucracy and difficulty towards reporting your taxes. There have been some breaks, by state. There are programs. Here, the IRS has announced a program for third-party payers and clients to resolve incorrect ERC claims. And that's one thing that we do, is that we help people when you get into trouble, when you have an issue, we help you straighten it out. But the best thing you can do is get everything together to avoid the problems in the first place. So they have national conferences, etc., for national tax professionals. Again, there's always plenty of conferences throughout the year for tax professionals. But I really quickly just wrote down some reasons to hire a tax professional. This is something I've seen, and again, my office, Guardian Tax Law, we don't prepare returns. We are very specialized in what we do, but we do work with excellent CPAs and tax preparers, and we give referrals across the country. I'm just referred someone to a tax preparer in New Hampshire, and then in Irvine, California, in the LA area. So again, we give both sides of the country. We make connections. We can connect people to excellent CPAs, and we also have more local ones, or ones that we have worked with long term in New York, California, Arizona, that we refer people to that we trust, and will take care of our clients. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and just kind of go through this list. I don't prepare my own returns, and I'll tell you why. Because it got to the point where I would run TurboTax and just kind of plug in my numbers thinking I had a simple return. I would try to do it myself, and whenever I just use their system, or I would take it to a tax professional as I started having children and purchased a home, I always got a better result using a program, using a service, and then as my taxes got more complicated, going to a professional. I don't touch my taxes now. I don't do the bookkeeping. I don't, I have a CPA, a tax professional do my taxes, and I have ever since I founded Guardian Tax Law. Ever since I had my own company and became even more complicated. You get larger refunds in general, and you can avoid scams and bad advice. You have something to bounce ideas off of, and there's a lot of bad advice out there. So I mentioned the IRS gives bad advice all the time, and there's zero accountability. They actually have rules in place and procedures where they're not supposed to give any advice, and it's gotten to the point, sometimes it's to the point of stupidity where you just want basic information. Hey, do I need to file this return? Did I have any income for this year? And they can't tell you yay or nay. They just have to say, well, look at your transcripts, And it makes it harder and harder for the average taxpayer. So there's a lot of scams out there, bad information on the internet. I'll use about new credits, new programs, etc. And it's been a huge issue. And the IRS has come out and published plenty of articles about it. And I've been sharing those as they come out. But new credits that are being promoted online that in reality are for very narrow purposes, and most people don't meet them. So when they're claiming those refunds on your return, even if you get a refund, the IRS is pulling that money back, and now all of a sudden you owe taxes, and then you have to call someone like me. It's better to get good advice and avoid it. You can always get more than one opinion. So think of a tax professional as a doctor. If you really don't like what your doctor's telling you, or if he doesn't make you feel comfortable, get a second opinion. So if you go and you talk to a CPA, and I do this all the time, if someone just really doesn't like someone that we refer to, we'll refer them to someone else. Again, we don't get kickbacks or referral fees or at all from any of the tax professionals that we refer to. So if you have questions, getting some good advice and getting it from multiple people absolutely helps. So when people come into our office and we talk to them and they say, oh, well, that's what someone else said, and we can confirm that or explain it better, and then give them more information, they're very grateful because now they have the information to make an informed decision. Tax avoidance and planning. So we talked about with the rising interest rates, taking out more income now to pay a lower rate before the tax rates go up in 2025, at the end of 25, beginning of 26. Especially if they're going to raise corporate rates, if they're going to tax stocks now, it makes a lot more sense to convert things over to Roth, helping people plan for your future. There are financial coaches that will help you throughout the way. First, start saving and then start making investments and helping you improve your financial situation long-term for you and your family. Any decent preparer should have errors and emissions insurance. If they don't, run. So what that does is it creates a layer of accountability. So if someone doesn't do a good job, if they mess up on your taxes, they should have insurance that will cover their clients in case there's an issue here. Now, if you have someone that's just hanging a shingle and they haven't been there long, check their Google reviews, check them out. Don't just walk into a shop and just hire the first person you talk to. Part of this is being informed consumers, being aware of what's out there. And not only should a tax preparer give you good advice, but they should have errors and emissions insurance to protect you and cover any losses in case they didn't file something on time or they missed something. Make sure that you've done everything you can and provided the documents to them. But as long as you're being thorough and complete, it should be on your tax preparer if they make a mistake. So again, this is very important that you go in with your eyes open. And again, I'm not saying you have to hire a large company, but a company that's been around, been established, and it doesn't have to be a CPA. I refer to CPAs regularly, but I do also refer to tax preparers that have years of experience, often 20, 30 years of experience, and do excellent work as well. And they can be very affordable too. And CPAs can be affordable too. Last thing here is review your tax returns. Don't just sign them without understanding what's on the tax return. Now, I don't understand all the credits, all the exemptions that I get, and I'll ask some questions, but here I am, a tax attorney, and I don't understand all of it. So I'm not saying you have to become an expert in it, but it is important that you understand what's going in, the numbers going in, and that they're accurate. So I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me where CPAs fudge the numbers or a tax preparer fudge the numbers, and usually a tax preparer because they don't have as strict licensing requirements. They have less at stake if they mess up. But again, I know plenty of excellent ones. But you should know what numbers are going in. You should verify, and they should make sense to you. And then when you sign on to it, you should feel comfortable about it. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't think things are right, get a second opinion or even a third opinion. Yes, they're busy. Yes, they're hard to connect to, but it's always easy to connect when you get in there early. When you go talk to them early in the year, the earlier the year, the more likely you're going to be to get in. And so there's going to be some CPAs, there are excellent CPAs that they're booked from early January all the way through the tax season, and then they take a nice month or two long vacation because they were working like dogs through that period. If someone's just too booked, go find someone else. There are other people that aren't crazy busy, but I do talk to CPAs, great CPAs, and like, look, I've got my book of business. I'm busy. I'm as busy as I want to be. I don't want more. And that's okay. But there are other alternatives out there. So if you're looking for a great career path, you might want to consider accountancy, being a CPA or tax preparer. There's a huge demand out there. And again, know what's on your return. And if you have any kind of complications to it, I highly recommend using a CPA. And we will see you tomorrow.